Welcome to Daddy's Podcast.
This is the Redefining Plastics Podcast. Welcome to the Redefining Plastics Podcast. My name is Justin Riney. I've got two of my favorite people in the plastics industry on today, two coworkers even. And now that I'm actually somewhat allowed to talk about the company I work for, we've got Danielle and we've got Alex from INEOS Styrolution. Welcome to the show. Why don't we start with Alex, since I know you're so excited to be here, to give us a little breakdown on who you are, what you do, and all that good stuff.
Sure. So I'm Alex Compton. I have been with INEOS for almost 4 years now. I've been in plastics for, I think it's 13 years now. Danielle and I are at the same mile marker for that. And I'm from the Midwest originally. I'm from Wisconsin, but I'm currently based out of Atlanta, Georgia. And yeah, I've done a whole lot of different things in this industry, worked for a number of different companies, and it's been quite the experience so far.
It's all on the commercial side, right? All
Yes.
in sales.
Oh, sorry. I left that out. Yes, I'm on the commercial side. I'm in account manager here with INEOS.
Danielle,
Hey everyone.
you
I'm
are.
Maziur, based in the Chicagoland area. Alex mentioned that I've been in the plastics industry for 13 years. We're actually going on 15, Alex. Started in
Are we
2000.
really?
Yeah.
I miscounted that.
It's when you're having fun, my friend. I've been with INEOS Styrolution for 5 years now. Hard to believe. All in the commercial side. All of my time in the plastics industry has been on the commercial side, in various roles, from inside sales, account management, to inside sales director, to now I'm in distribution management for INEOS Styrolution. So kind of parallel to Alec in the commercial team, the direct sales team, I manage our distribution network here at INEOS Styrolution.
And you do it oh so well, both of you. So my crusade, I guess, over the last 2 years has been women in plastics. How do we get more women interested in the industry? How do we support young women that are coming in the industry? And it's somewhat it's like a personal project because I have two young daughters. And like, for me, I'm very concerned about the world that they're going into, first and foremost, but I'm also very concerned about some of the stuff I see in our industry, because people always ask me, would you recommend a job in the plastics industry?
Mhm.
And I always say, well, it depends on who you are, depends on what you can take.
Mhm.
Can you roll with the punches? There's a lot to it, but
Yeah.
I really wanted to talk through your specific experiences, because I look at the two of you. One is already a leader in the plastics industry. The other is one that I am constantly pushing to take leadership roles in the plastics industry. And I wanted to talk about like how you got here, why plastics, why this, and then maybe a little bit about what it's like being a woman in a majority old white guy industry. So all that makes sense. We're on the same page, kind of where I want to go with this. So since Alex is the one that's most excited to be here, I want to ask a very simple question.
Sure.
Would you recommend to any of your girlfriends to work in the plastics industry?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's always an interesting conversational topic, right? Outside of work with people, because I feel like a lot of people don't understand plastics, right? They know they use them a lot in their day-to-day lives, but they don't think about it very often. And so it's always kind of a funny, probably for years I've been joking around with people, it's a real conversation starter when they ask, what you do and how you got into it. But I would recommend it. I mean, I think I sort of stumbled my way into plastics, and it wasn't initially my plan. But I do really like the industry. I think it's interesting. We get to always work on, I feel like we're always working on something new. Like, and I worked in a bunch of different end markets with a number of different end applications and different functions within organizations, right? And so there's definitely, certain areas I prefer and whatnot. But I think it's always, it's always something new. And so for me, I think I'm a very like curious person. Danielle can probably, testify to that too. And
Yeah.
so I like that, that constant sort of, spark of curiosity for me. It like keeps me really engaged. So I definitely recommend it, for other people. It's just an industry that people don't know a lot about, right? Like, and it's not something that I ever even knew was a possibility, like in undergrad when I was studying. So,
Yeah.
Danielle, I'll let you speak to your experience.
Yeah. I wouldn't do as carte blanche. Yes, I would recommend it. I think
Okay.
it depends on the individual that I'm talking to, right? As you mentioned, how much can you take? You have to have pretty thick skin to be in this industry as a female.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You mentioned it's an old white man.
It's like every meeting I'm in is a bunch of old white dudes. Yeah.
Little diversity, right?
Yeah.
When I walk into a room that I bring diversity by at least 25% with the room
Mhm.
that I'm in. Being female and, you know, it's all white guys, typically.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So a lot of women aren't comfortable getting in front of a group of 90% men. So
Mhm.
if you're not prepared for that, whether you're in social or purchasing, logistics, or whatever the case is, this isn't an industry for you today. Could it be? It could. But,
Mhm.
to Justin's point, how do we promote the industry to women? And I know, Alex, you said this wasn't your path.
Mhm.
And I've had so many conversations with people of like, how did you get into the plastics industry? Well, I didn't even know it. I was
Yeah.
by away, ready to go with orthopedics. And I was like, I'm not doing another 8 years of school. How do I get a degree of biology, which besides teaching, didn't want to get into education. And I happened to find a role where you needed a certain science degree, and my bio degree qualified. And I found my way into this world that I didn't know. Right? There's a lot of people going to like polymer science and engineering, and you figure out plastics is a niche. But for those of us like in the business world, they don't know that plastics is an option. I think we need to start marketing people who are in business schools, are being
Mhm.
business schools.
And I have a similar background to Danielle too, right? My degree's in biomedical science. I thought I was going to be a doctor. Same thing as Danielle. We were on similar paths, and decided I think it was my junior year of college that I didn't want to go to medical school for another 4 years. And like you said, Danielle, do all the training and thought about grad school too and sort of next to that. And actually out of college, I applied to a lot of like pharmaceutical sales jobs because I felt like that applied, most directly to my training and my background in the healthcare, side of things. And so I also, I ended up finding this opportunity through a friend of mine for a chemical company out of Chicago, which is where Danielle and I met, funnily enough, at our first job out of college. And the rest is history. I've been in it ever since, and it translated, like Danielle said, it translated loosely to plastics and to polymers. So non-traditional.
I love how both of you decided very late in life that, grad school and being a doctor wasn't for you. That was
Mhm.
decided for me very early on when I realized I was not smart enough or dedicated enough to do those jobs. But I think the thing for me is I've had several conversations on this show with younger women in the plastics industry because, like I said, this has been kind of a kick for me for a while.
Mhm.
I had one individual on here. She was the co-host on this show for a while, Samantha Ryan, who I thought she was awesome. Like her responses when we talked through this, but she was telling me about how every time she went to a trade show, she felt like it was like speed dating for every plastics individual on earth, because she's the one woman under 30.
Mhm.
And so it was like every man was like right to her.
Mhm.
Is that your experience in these kind of events in the same way? Well, I'm just curious because when I talk to people and I'm like, hey, come work for the plastics industry. It's a great industry, great people. And then I hear things like, well, yeah, there's a bunch of creeps running around these conferences. Yeah, that's not great.
Mhm.
So
Probably like in any industry, you get people like that, right?
yeah,
I think, by nature of working in a male dominated industry, right, you're always going to probably get a little bit of that. I haven't, I have some experiences with that weren't super egregious or anything, right? But I think like it's something that you learn to sort of like work around, right? And you learn to like adapt to that. And I think there's also the element of you're working with a lot of like men. It's almost like you have to prove yourself more, right? As a female in this industry. And so I think like instead of focusing on that in my career, like it definitely came up. And earlier on in my career, I didn't always know how to handle it, right? And then as you kind of get more experience and as you're further along in your career, I try to channel it instead into like sort of, proving myself more, as capable in this role, right? And I try to decenter that, for lack of a better word, right? And make it less about like me being a female and, minority in the industry, right? Versus let me just demonstrate myself to you, and like my knowledge basis and experience. And I think once you do that, then you get a little bit less of that type of behavior, right? So
do you really think that you're held to a different standard? Like you have to do more, work harder, be better. That's for both of you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Danielle. Yeah.
I would say initially,
Mhm.
especially, I mean, we're in the middle of our careers, but in our industry, we're young. Uh,
Mhm.
Very young for our
so
industry.
for work,
I'm young for our industry and I'm not that young. Yeah.
if you're young, you have to else in
Yeah.
any industry. If you're young and a female in a male dominated industry, it's even another level of moving.
Mm.
And if you start a new company or you're in a new role within the same company, you almost start over having to prove your work and your value and that you're just as capable as the men around you, the same age men around you. And don't get it wrong. There are many, many, many men like you, Justin, who fully support women and
Mhm.
champion. And, going back to your trade show comment, does it feel like speed dating? It can.
Yeah.
But you also learn to identify those individuals just as you do in your personal life, right? And you
Mhm.
also identify individuals who have your back.
Yeah.
Who you can tap on the shoulder and get you out of a situation. If you're in an uncomfortable conversation, very simple, like, I don't like this conversation, I'm over here. And,
Mhm.
and I think that's really key, regardless of the industry you're in. As a female nowadays, you have to have your head on a swivel 24/7.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, have your guard up with everyone you meet.
I think I am almost too attuned to this. Like I go out of my way not to communicate sometimes to
Yeah.
women in these scenarios and like conferences because I don't want to come off as that creepy guy that's just talking to you for whatever reason.
Mhm.
Like unless I've got like a meeting with this person or it's somebody that I know,
Mhm.
I'm probably not going to talk to them just because I don't want to come off as that guy, you
Mhm.
know? And maybe that's not good either. Maybe there's like a middle ground there, but I try to make sure that I do anything I can to make everybody as welcome as possible.
Mhm.
But maybe that actually does the opposite. I don't know. I have no idea.
It goes to the point of like, do you think you're held to a different standard? That's not necessarily being held to a different standard, but we do need to be a little bit more outgoing. I myself am an extroverted introvert, 100%. Like I like to be home, get my rest, do my thing, recharge my battery.
Me
And
too.
I'm pretty chill 24/7 on. It feels like as a female, there are a lot of guys that stay back because they don't want to be that guy, especially nowadays. And having Me Too movement, right? Like you can't be too careful more for somebody, and it could be seen as, discrimination, which is just absurd. But so you got to go out of your way to like open the door conversation as well. So it's a tough balance, but it also is you guys too.
I guess I hear everything you're saying, and it concerns me. But I'm going to give you a little bit of insight into my head. So I know both of you say you feel like you have to really prove yourself. I bet you if you ask any man in the industry, they would say that that's their number one thing, that they feel like they have to prove themselves. So I don't know if that's necessarily just a female experience. It probably is heightened because you are kind of one in a crowd. Because I'll tell you, every role I've ever had, I've walked into it thinking I'm not good enough for this job. And I don't know how I got here. And I'm constantly feel like I have to prove myself to everybody around me when in fact, I don't need to. Because I'll tell the both of you, don't have to prove yourselves anymore. Like, you've been in this industry, you know this industry. You can go to another role and they would be hiring you for your experience and for everything that you've done. So you don't have to do that. But I completely understand feeling like you're one in a crowd of a bunch of others, of like just a bunch of old white dudes. How do we change that? How do we change that idea? How do we get women into the industry, feel comfortable, to grow, learn? Because I look at, we've talked about it several times so far, it's a bunch of old white guys. When those old white guys are gone, who's running this industry? Because there's a whole next layer of leaders that we need. And I think the three of us are going to be a big part of that. And so I want to figure out how we can get more diversity, specifically women, because I think you all bring a perspective that we need. And because honestly, our target market for getting people to change their minds about plastics are mothers. Like moms are the ones that are saying, well, microplastics are bad, we need to get rid of it.
Right.
So how do we change this? How do we make it more inviting to women from your perspective?
I think one generality is, and Alec, I don't know if you've had that happen to you, and it happens in every industry, right? Where you're trying to increase diversity. They say, we're looking to hire females for this role to increase diversity. Well, are you hiring me because I'm a female, or are you hiring me because I'm best for the job in a well candidate? And I think, speaking for myself, I'm kind of stubborn and want to prove myself and all these things. So like, I don't like that attitude. Like, I don't want to be hired because I'm a woman. I want to be hired because I'm the best.
Me too.
Yeah, we don't need quotas
in this industry in particular, because there are a lot of people who are trying to grow the number of plastics. That gets thrown around a lot, not intentionally in an egregious way, but to as females, it can come off that way, right? So I think that's one area that we need to look at as an industry to shift the dialogue, shift how we're communicating it, and what that looked like. And I don't know the answer there, but I think it's something we need to consider.
I agree. No, I totally echo that. I think sometimes if you get hyper focused on the way they're framing the position, or the approach that they're taking and trying to be sort of singularly focused on hiring a woman, um, in the interest of promoting diversity. It almost like takes away from the fact that you should be hiring the person that's most qualified. It could be me, it could be someone else, right? Like, and I think that that's the way they should be approaching it. And I totally agree with Danielle. I think some of the women that I've worked under in my career have been like some of the smartest women I've ever met. Like, I had a boss that did work for NASA before she worked in plastics, and she was super knowledgeable and really sharp and always like knew her stuff, and she was great. And yeah, so I some of the women I worked under have been like really, really impressive. And veterans to the industry, right? And some of them have retired since, I worked with them. And to your point, like how do you encourage, more people to get into it? I think like probably awareness would help too. I think Danielle touched on that earlier in the conversation. Like I didn't even know that was a possibility. I know a lot of folks have like plastics engineering degrees or they're chemies or some type of business, related field. I didn't even take business classes in college. I only took science classes. So, that was a lot of like learning on the job for me. And I think it's particularly challenging now, right? Your favorite topic. It's particularly challenging now because if I look at like friends of mine, like as an example, right, and think about them or people I were friends with, when I was in college, I think right now plastics, the whole perception of plastics, right, in the world, it's an interesting time for plastics. And
Yeah.
so how do you overcome that too, right? How do you overcome like the perception problem, I guess let's call it that, the perception problem that
Yeah.
plastics has, right? And I have conversations with friends of mine all the time that don't work in this industry, right? And defend plastics. And so I can imagine, grads coming out of school now that they're seeing a lot of that sort of negative rhetoric around plastics. And so how do you kind of overcome that, right? So
I'm kind of split on this because I
Mhm.
understand so let's say I'm a hiring manager and I want to find the best person for the role.
Mhm.
If I don't clarify in any of my postings or working with recruiters or whatever that I would like to have more women in leadership in the organization, there's a likelihood that I'm going to get a bunch of old white guys shown to me in the application process. So I completely understand and I agree that it should be merit based and you should get the job because you're the best.
Mhm.
But I do think there has to be something that's done within the industry to make sure that women are in the candidate pool. Not necessarily, hey, if everybody checks the box and candidate A is male and just slightly better than candidate B, but we're going to give it to candidate B because I want to check a box.
Mhm.
I don't want to do that. But at the same time, I want to have a talent pool that's diverse to
Mhm.
look at, So it's like, how do you balance that? Because I think that's where, like, I don't want to get into the whole DEI politics and
Mhm.
all of that, but
Mhm.
I think that's where a lot of like this misconception about DEI comes from is like, we just want to make sure that everybody has equal opportunity to
Exactly.
find the role, not necessarily give them the job because I want to get my DEI up or
Mhm.
my diversity up, but make sure that you at least have the opportunity.
Mhm. Mhm.
What do you think about that?
I think that's right where it's at. I
Mhm.
think we need to speak in more generalities instead of saying we want to add women to the candidate pool. We
Yeah.
want to have a talent pool that's diverse.
Mhm.
Same thing said differently,
Yeah.
right? Same goal said differently.
Mhm.
And I think that's really important. I think the rhetoric around it is one of the most important things. But
Agreed.
alternative to that, Alex applied for a job a couple years before this. in a certain industry that is male dominated within the plastics world and got passed up because she's a woman, and the customers that she would be interacting with prefer older white men. So she got passed up from an older white man. So, like, what do you do? What do you do for Alex? You're great. Your experience is great. We'd love to put you in this role. However, we're going with this person because he's an older white man.
That sounds like a lawsuit to me.
We just have more, industry experience, I guess, was the feedback, right? But how do you get industry experience without the opportunity to get that experience, right? You
Right.
know? And then how do you develop future generations when those folks retire?
What was the specific market for that?
It was automotive, which I have experience in the past as well.
A
So,
lot of key account management.
That's honestly, that's not all that surprising.
Correct.
Automotive's changed a little bit, but it's still kind of the old boys network. And and that goes beyond just selling plastics in there. That's like
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. That's
Um,
the old boys club, if you want to call it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll call it that.
Yeah. Going back to like, how do we draw women in? I think it's really differentiated in the plastics industry from oil and gas. Because
That's
we're
a
in
good
the
point.
chemical business, and historically, I mean, there's TV shows, right? There are no women in these TV shows and leading roles in the oil industry. How do we separate?
Yeah.
And create our own definition of what our industry looks like. And I think that's a job. Our generation,
right.
we're young, but we're not. Got great experience across the three of us right here, right? 45 years of experience between the three of us, right? Justin, I don't know how many.
Wow. Jeez. I don't
Close
know.
to it. 40 years old.
15 in the plastics industry, I
Out of
think.
the world.
Yeah.
Out of the womb.
Yeah. Right.
But I mean, I think that's a job for us to separate and also define the narrative, in Washington of what plastics is.
Right.
versus
Yeah. The amount of times that people tell me that I work for big oil,
Yeah.
it just
Sorry.
frustrates the hell out of me. Because if you look at it, petrochemicals, the entirety of petrochemicals, that's solvents, that's plastics, that's 4% of all oil and gas in the world. And we're talking about like we're some kind of driver for the oil and gas industry. We are we are the end of the line,
Yes.
and nobody cares. Like the oil and gas industry does not care about us. So I do think that we need to differentiate. I think that's a good way of putting it. I don't know how we do that,
No, neither.
but I think separating the idea that plastics are evil, oil and gas is evil, because our experience, I would say, and I'm going to say this for me, but I want your feedback too. I think it's a genuinely good industry to work for with really good people.
Yeah.
And people that have been very interested in pouring into my career to make me better.
Yeah.
Do you both feel exactly the same way? Did you have mentors early on that really wanted to invest in you and drive you forward?
Oh, yeah. I mean, honestly, I think some of the mentors that I've had in the industry really made a big difference for me. I mean, I can think of an individual that Danielle and I worked with early on at our first job out of college, a gentleman who was on the industrial sales team with us. And it was, correct me if I'm wrong, Danielle, but it was basically us and like 7 men and close to retirement age. And he was great. He kind of took me under his wing and was like, hey, I've been in the industry for a really long time. He worked for, Lubrizol and other big organizations and had worked his way up, and he'd been in management positions. And so he was used to, mentoring folks that worked under him. And he was really, instrumental for me, I think, in like staying in plastics early on, because I think like, he really helped to give me a lot of guidance, and not just from a sales perspective, right? But just, in general in my career. And so not only him, but I mean, I've tried to find folks. I think mentorship is really important. And I I think that's a good way to probably keep people in the industry or women, if you're looking for, to try to retain women in the industry. I think that's like probably really critical. I've always found that's really important, to align someone with someone else that's more veteran to the industry that they really can look to as someone for, guidance, navigating the challenges of the industry. So
Danielle, what do you think?
Coming in straight out of college, not knowing a thing about the industry and what there was to it, I didn't have a mentor, so to speak, right away, but kind of had to navigate it myself. And there were no women who had been in the industry for a long time to really lean on. So it was the men who were close to retirement who either took us under their wing or didn't. And fortunately for Alex and I, that saw us and almost like our kids and wanted us to be successful and wanted to hand off what they've worked on to bright individuals. So they took extra time, I feel like, and spent it with us to make sure we were equipped enough to, have a baseline to start growing and developing on that. Veering off of that, I think mentorship in the plastics industry for women in particular is really hard to find.
Does it have to be a woman, though? A
It does
woman
not.
mentor?
no, some of the best I've had are men, honestly. Yeah.
Does it make it more awkward, though? Like, I'm just asking from your perspective.
It could be, but it for me, it doesn't, probably
Okay.
because I've grown to expect it in the industry. But if we're trying to pull women in, we need more women mentors.
Right.
Yeah. I agree.
Right.
I agree.
They're just, when I say I've had men that were mentors, it's just by function of, the organizations that we worked for at the time and the fact that we were the minority on those industrial sales teams, and so we didn't have a female mentor available to us at that time.
And, in previous roles, the women that were in leadership positions really led before Alex and I and really broke through glass ceiling. But in doing so, the whole prove yourself really put them to a point where they established this expectation in themselves and they're working way more than their peers in regards to
Fair.
time. So there is no time for mentorship. Their intention would be to mentor. I had female leaders in a previous role that would meet with, the goal was to meet with quarterly and go through, what we're doing, where we want to go, what the path looks like, what the industry looks like, growth opportunity. And it ended up being because the time just wasn't there.
Yeah.
Because, the higher you go, fewer and far between the women are.
Honestly, as you know, the higher you go, the less free time you're going to have. And I guess I never thought about the fact that, using your words, that women feel like they have to work harder in the same roles to get ahead. So if you extrapolate that, like, I feel like I'm pretty busy, but if a woman was in my role, maybe they're working 10 times harder. And then they have less time for these kind of conversations, that less time to pour back into people. And so I'm trying to figure out how we change that. Like, we have to get it to a scenario where people will feel like comfortable. The two of you feel comfortable in the industry, and now you don't feel like you have to work harder. Maybe that's a utopia. Maybe that's something that's 50 years down the road, because I, from my perspective, look at the two of you as possibly the greatest resource we have to pour back into the next generation of women leaders. But if you don't have the time to do it because either you're overworked or you feel like you need to work so much harder than everyone else to maintain or get ahead, I understand that too. Like, it's this weird dichotomy where you work hard and you're good at what you do, and that's great. But at the same time, you got to take a little bit to give back to somebody else. But how do you do that if you feel like you always have to work harder than everybody else?
I think from my perspective, the women I'm referring to continue, they set a baseline expectation, and it was significantly more than their peers. improving themselves. And how do you take your foot off the gas,
Mm-hmm.
lower your output
When
once
you've already established that.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, part of it is who you work for, the people,
Mhm.
not necessarily the company. The company plays a role, but it's the people who insulates you if you do need time, if you do need flexibility to be a mom, right?
Mhm.
To take care of whatever it is you need to take care of, to be a
Yeah.
parent, I should say. Because we say working mom, we rarely say working dad, right? That's a whole
Well,
Mhm.
another discussion.
that's what I am at this
Right.
point.
Right. Exactly right. That's why I say
Yeah.
I'm guilty. Like I need to say to be a parent, right? Not just mom,
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
flexibility, but who insulates you and allows you that extra time to be the mentor, to pour back into the industry.
True.
And where I'm at today, I feel that I have the insulation. I have the people here are wonderful.
Completely agree.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
know, it's the best part of the job is the people.
Our boss,
Yeah.
you and I's boss,
Yeah.
Danielle, is exactly who we're talking about.
Mhm.
Exactly. And the insulation there is wonderful. So I am in a place now where I've worked with leadership enough that I'm comfortable that I don't feel like I have to go above and beyond my peers to prove myself.
Yeah.
Am I going to do my best? Absolutely every day.
Exactly.
But
Mhm.
I don't need to go 110% like some of the other folks may do. So I think it's establishing an understanding and comfortability and how do we get everyone else there? And part of it is educating the industry of times have changed,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
It no longer is it 8 to 5 at your desk. Everyone's working at all times of the day.
Mhm.
Yeah. You don't have to
It
tell
doesn't
me.
matter, right?
Yeah.
You don't
2
have to do what
o'clock
you're
in the
not doing,
morning,
right? Like,
midnight. Yeah.
yeah, it gets done when it gets done. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
it's shifting that mentality to be able
Mhm.
to free up time, maybe not between 8 and 5, right? But where does it fit in? And how does
Yeah.
it become acceptable for everyone?
Do we need mentorship groups? Do we need that to be like a focus?
I don't know. I guess I've never had a mentorship opportunity in a larger group setting like that, but I feel like for me personally, it's more impactful when you have one specific individual that you can go to for advice or guidance, versus sometimes in a bigger group, you kind of things get lost, right? Just
Yeah.
because people have different experiences or they're in different roles in the organization. So it's not always as applicable to you. So for me, it's always been, most beneficial when I've had someone that works in the commercial side and has similar experiences and really can give me, different advice based off of their experiences that I can draw,
Yeah.
parallels to. So
So my experience, and this obviously is coming from a somewhat old white guy now.
I wouldn't say
The
that.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. It is just
um when I was working for Sunoco, they put me in this I don't even like some kind of leadership like program, like
Mhm.
Kickstarter.
Mhm.
And in that you were given a mentor
Mhm.
at the end of it, where it was somebody that was in upper management at somewhere within the company. I thought that was excellent.
Mhm.
And it wasn't necessarily like man with man, woman with woman, whatever, but it was a group and a program that was specifically built to teach people how to lead and teach people how to be that next generation of leadership within the company. I think that company did really well there. I don't know if this exists in our industry or anything like that. Have you ever had any kind of experience with a program like that?
Not in our industry. I did a leadership program through my old company, Solvay, and it was also like a women focused
Okay.
leadership program, like leadership development through an outside organization. And it was all people local to Atlanta, but they worked in a number of different industries and they tried to sort of pair you up with a group because it was one mentor and three mentees underneath them. So a little bit of a group function like you were describing, Justin. However, we worked in different industries. So sometimes we'd have parallels across, our experiences and it was nice to have, other folks to speak to you about different experiences that you were going through in your industry or in your role or working with a, difficult boss or coworker or whatever it may be, client, So that was an interesting experience. I've never had something that's like that in specifically plastics. So
I have in previous role, but in a massive organization, they pick 20 top performers and put you into a 6-month program, where you're putting together a presentation and ideas for the future of the business, but you're partnered with somebody in the C-suite. And I had a good experience with my mentor in the C-suite, but some of my peers who were also selected for that group exchanged 2 emails with their partner in the C-suite. So
Yeah.
while the intention was there, it's as good as what the mentor is going to put in and the mentee, right? You've got to push your mentor to be there for you. That was within one organization. Outside of it, having attended the Women in Plastic Breaking the Mold Forum, I went to the first and second ones, I believe, that they had. They're wonderful experiences. They were obviously it was early on, and they were building on what was the attendance like, what was the interest going to be. And as it grew, they developed into mentorship and connecting people like breakout sessions. But because it's such a short amount of time and the attendee list is just name and title, right? So
Yeah.
it's not synonymous across organization. It's hard to get meaningful groups together. I've not been to a Women Breaking the Mold event in a while because I can't afford to be away from my desk right now.
Yeah.
For 3 days for an event that's not going to contribute to the bottom line just because we're so lean. And I think a lot of people are in that position right now.
I think most companies are in that position
not
right now.
just
We've all become so lean. I think the mentorship side of any industry is probably struggling right now with how lean people are.
how do you I think about like your daughters, right? Or Danielle's daughters, like how do you get young women interested in STEM, right? Which is outside of the focus of just plastics, right? And I don't know the right answer to that. I mean, I think you both might have better perspective on that, as two that have kids. But I think that for me, looking back as a kid, if my parents had exposed me maybe to that more as a child or gotten me, I had a little brother, right? And so I got into, science projects and, playing around outside and doing things, in the woods or at the lake or whatever with him. And so maybe I got exposure to that as a kid. But what about, like your daughters that just have, sisters, and how do you expose them to that side of the world, right? And get them interested in science or math or whatever it may be, right?
I think it helps for my kids that their dad is a nerd and he loves that kind of stuff. So my youngest wants to be an astronaut right now. That's
I
like
love that.
that's
Me too,
all she
when I grew up.
wants.
Yeah.
She's got this little outfit that's like a NASA outfit and she wears it all the time. Like she's going to be an astronaut. I don't know why. I think
That's
it's because
awesome.
I don't know if you remember and I don't know if they had this in your elementary school, but every year in my elementary school, which is a long time ago, it had this little like blow up igloo type thing that was like a portable planetarium.
Oh, cool.
Did you ever have
We did
those when you
not
were a
have
kid?
that. No.
And they
Oh,
would put
awesome.
up like constellations and it would all be all dark in there. And then they would play like this like story
Yeah.
while these things were being projected
That's neat.
on the ceiling.
That's so
So
cool.
that got me really interested in like space and stuff
Space.
like that and
Yeah.
science. And so I think that's why my daughter's really interested in it. But
Keep that
yeah,
enthusiasm.
I think
Yeah.
it's a valid point though, because if you look at just the way the world is going, it's going more towards technology every single day.
Right.
And with the advent of AI, which, that's its own thing, which is to me, it's a whole lot of talk, not a lot of actual stuff going on. But there's going to be a very specific skill set that's needed in the next generation for doing jobs anywhere. And it's going to probably be way more technical than it is today. So getting women involved in STEM, I think, is a huge deal. I
Mhm.
think you nailed that there. But then we've got our PR issues
Mhm.
as a plastics industry. How do we go to these schools and convince young women that we provide a great career when they think plastic's bad, don't want to do that? Like, how
Mhm.
do we do that?
I think we're just, and I'm looking like this where girls are in school, where we're at, our generation is really the core of the teaching right now.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
a lot of the women, my kids are in elementary school, but a lot of the women that are in elementary school are all about getting kids in STEM. So we
Mhm.
have STEM programs in our public schools that really promotes it. We have STEM night once a month. It's
That's
free.
awesome.
Come to.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The point where, like, you mentioned your daughter wearing an astronaut's gear. Last night, I'm driving my son home from the doctor, and out of nowhere, he goes, "Mom, there's just so much left to explore." And like,
Yeah.
just this
Yes.
profound statement from a 4-year-old.
Mhm.
I'm like, in my mind, it started going like, how do I harness that and keep that mentality of wanting to learn more about whatever it is? He
Mhm.
could have been
Mhm.
talking about the earth. He could have been talking about the sea. He could have been talking about
People.
building, whatever.
Yeah.
Right. People.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that is what we need to harness. And we could go into education box and put
Yeah.
inside box. That's a whole nother conversation. But I think we're moving in the right direction, getting all kids involved in STEM. But
Mhm.
how do we take it to the next step and educate about plastics and how they save the world during COVID?
Yeah.
That's the marketing we need to have.
Well, we screwed up that we didn't hammer that during COVID. We just sat back.
I don't think it's too
Well,
late.
I don't know. I feel
But
like it is. I feel like Don Quixote, like I'm tilting with windmills, like not getting anywhere. But yeah, that's
that
a different conversation altogether.
Yeah, that's always the approach I take for what it's worth with friends of mine that don't work in the industry when they start bringing up, whatever Netflix documentary is the
Yeah.
latest and greatest on why plastics are bad, right? I'm like, well, think back to, COVID and, when you go to the doctor in the medical system, like how much plastics are in, all the devices that save your life and other people's lives, and I guess I try to humanize it for people,
Yep.
right? Because that seems to be the best approach in terms of just like getting people to come back down to a normal level about it and not be so, I don't know how to put it besides just emotional about it, right? They come at it from an emotional
Yep.
perspective and that seems to be the way that, you can kind of like I said, humanize it for them. So hearts and minds, I guess, which is easier said than done.
You're telling me. But so you're kind of leading me into the next part of where I wanted to go. So I like that.
Mhm.
That's a good transition. See, you've got podcasting in your future. You just didn't even know it.
Meet up,
Because I
Alex.
listen to so many of them. Just because I listen to them doesn't mean, qualified.
I've also been on a big kick of changing the narrative
Mhm.
around plastics. This idea that we're the devil to certain people.
Mhm.
And I have gone at lengths talking about how talking about science in the current world is not going to win us any friends.
Mhm. Mhm.
We've got to tell a story that resonates from a human perspective, emotional. It has, because that's why humans make 90% of their decisions. They
Mhm.
may feel like it's
Logic.
logical and broken down, but for the most part, it's because they felt something that
Mhm.
drove them to do things.
Actually.
So I'm all about this idea of changing the narrative. My issue is, I think the messenger, me, is not what people need to hear.
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
messenger is someone like Danielle, young mom with kids, talking about why she's in the plastics industry and what she's doing and why it matters.
Mhm.
Not
Mhm.
necessarily calling you out, Danielle, but you know what I mean. It's just
Yeah.
like that it's the image.
Exactly.
I think that's important because
Mhm.
like I can only reach so many people from an emotional perspective because I'm not really that emotional of a person. Like
Mhm.
that's not my strength. My strength is logic and data
Mhm.
and just like, I'm not a storyteller. I've never been a storyteller,
Mhm.
but we need people that are.
Yeah.
And that's why we need more women in this industry, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Not to generalize and say women are storytellers and men are not, but like, I think you get what I'm saying. It's
Mhm.
just,
Yeah, it has me thinking about like how do you get the kids involved?
Yeah.
My kids,
Yeah.
I think I sit at a computer all day, even though we drive past our plant, all the time. It's down the street, and have shown them plaques and pellets and all these things, finished goods that are all around us. But how do we, educate them on that and get them involved into the storytelling? I think that
yeah.
could be really cool to involve the kids.
So Nashville, so I did that ribbon cutting for the
Mhm.
Polystyrene Recycling Alliance. What they're going to do is they're going to make a bunch of school stuff and take it to the schools and tell the kids about which foam is recyclable, which foam isn't, where do you take it, that kind of stuff.
Cool.
Educating the youngest, because if you look at data out there, the youngest Americans are more worried about plastics than older generations.
Mhm.
And they believe that recycling is a fraud for the most part. Like Gen Z recycles at the lowest rate of any generation because they've been told their whole lives that it's all a fraud.
Mhm.
So the younger generation, so our kids, and then even now we're getting into Gen Z having kids.
Mhm.
Those are I don't want to say like we need to go indoctrinate children. That's not what I'm trying to say. But we need to talk to kids. We need to have conversations because kids are smart. Like I can say from my experience, my kids are way smarter than I was at that age. And I think it's probably because I talk to them like they're adults and they probably hate that, but that's just what I do.
The different
'Cause I don't
generations
know.
drinking though right now.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like I think if we're not in the conversation, they're just going to go off what they see on social media, which is just
Mhm.
this echo chamber of hate, which
Mhm.
I just try to avoid at all costs, but I always get sucked into.
It's
But
hard not
so
to.
it is. It is. I want to wrap this all back around
Mhm.
to women in plastics. Like we've talked about a lot of different things. I think if I'm taking takeaways from this right now, it seems like we need to have an inviting company/industry where women feel accepted and they don't feel like they have to work harder than others, which may be a utopia that we're
Mhm.
working towards, but we need that. We need more mentorship. We need to communicate our industry's values better than we do.
Mhm.
Get more women involved. And we need to really educate kids that we're good for the environment. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you feel like we should be doing in order to draw more women?
Circling back to, when you're a teenager in high school, deciding where you want to go to school, if you're going to college, right?
Mhm.
This massive undertaking. And then once you get to school, you're supposed to declare a major right away.
Mhm.
I know a lot of kids nowadays are like, I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow. Look,
I got a history degree. So yeah.
we're
Yeah.
buying a pre-med, right? Like, I think educating those in the business world, I feel like business is a default degree for a lot of folks who know they want to do something in the business world and corporate world, but don't know where and what it's going to look like. Educating that there's roles other than engineering roles.
Mhm.
This
Mhm.
industry is really, you think about the examples in the textbooks when you're, maybe you're getting your MBA or whatever. It's always about the big, like Pepsi, Coke, McDonald's. They were never do you think about plastics. And until that door is open, people, you don't know it exists. And I think
Mhm.
that's a really critical area, aside from educating the youth and all of that. I think that's an untapped network, if you will, business schools.
Case studies and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or send women to those like recruiting fairs or whatever they call them, where they go.
Did you ever go to a recruiting fair? I never
I've
went to
never
a
been to
full
one.
recruiting
No.
fair.
No.
But at the same time, I wasn't exactly the target audience because, like I said, I had a history degree. Going into business was the farthest thing from my mind at the time.
Me too. Me
and
too.
So maybe that is good because I know that every packaging company I ever worked for in the past goes to those things all the time. Goes
Mhm.
to career fairs. They've got like a traveling road show.
Mhm.
That goes to all of them. I'm trying to think through like how I can be helpful. Like
Mhm.
how me as with the platform that you know that I have now, and how else can I help in this conversation? Or can I? Does it need to be a woman driving this?
I don't think it needs
I
to
don't
be.
I don't think it needs to be either. Yeah. I think men, can do a lot to drive that forward too. Like we said, whether it's mentorship opportunities or whether it's building women up in the industry, right? That they work with. And I think we've been, or I don't want to speak for Danielle, but, I've been fortunate and had, really positive experiences and some less positive, right? And the ones that are really positive stick with you. And they make you wanna stay in the industry, right? And they make it a, more positive experience overall, and so I've always been I've really, worked under some men that I've really respected and looked up to a lot, and, that's made me, wanna continue in the industry, and so I think that that's probably important for women too coming into it.
I was just going to add to that. I think you having the platform shows there's women in this workforce in the industry. So continuing to do what you do and maybe even bringing people from their industry. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
information back to the families, right? And their
Mhm.
peers, it could be, but their youth, the youth that they're around. I think, I'm really sticking on this, but I think about education and
Mhm.
educators themselves and how do
Mhm.
we do that? And they can start preaching,
I don't want to make it seem like I only want to protect female jobs in this
Mhm.
industry. I've worked with just great people.
Mhm.
Now you got in any industry, you're going to have people you don't like. You're going to have some people that do things that are not great.
Absolutely.
Okay. But the great majority of people that we work with are great.
Mhm.
They're awesome. And
Mhm.
they have poured more into me than I
Mhm.
would ever be able to repay.
Mhm.
So I am doing everything that I can with whatever platform I have to make sure that I give back as much as I can. And that's why when people say, like, why are you fighting these fights? Like, you have a skill set. You can go work in an industry that you're not fighting these battles all the time. It's like, well, I
Mhm.
like these people.
Mhm.
Like, I
Yeah.
want to protect these jobs. I
Mhm.
want to make it about them.
Mhm.
And they are the ones that are not thought about very much in these discussions of plastics or no plastics. It's always
Mhm.
big oil
Mhm.
is the problem. Like, what about Jimmy that's working extrusion that
Mhm.
has a very specific skill set that's probably not going to get another job that pays that well?
Right.
And so, like these things, and then I look at how do we make the future of our industry better? And I
Mhm.
think it's more diversity. And that's where I always come back to because, like, Danielle, our boss is not an American. He's a national from another country,
Mhm.
and he's one of the best people I've ever worked for in this industry.
Mhm.
So it's not even just women;
Mhm.
it's diversity, capital D.
Yep.
Like, how do we get more? And it's not even about the quota again. I'm not talking about hiring somebody just because they look different, sound different, act different. I'm talking about having different perspectives,
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
different
experiencing.
life experiences.
I think.
That's what we need
Yeah.
to be better. And I think the reason why we've gotten just beaten up over the years is because we got a bunch of arrogant white people, white men
Mhm.
that are like, it's a fad. This whole thing's going to go away.
Mhm.
Sustainability is not important. We don't need to worry about that. And they were saying that 20 years ago. They can't say that anymore.
No.
Mhm.
And because of their lack of direction and drive and not really listening to the voice of the consumer, now we're screwed. And so that's why I want more voices of that match what the consumer actually is.
Mhm.
And I think women is just a big piece of that.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Any other thoughts on that? Like any other comments? We've gone an hour and 5 minutes now, which I'm sure it seemed like 2 hours for Alex and maybe 30 minutes for Danielle.
I mean, to your point, I think that's an interesting comment, because I think when you're talking about, changing hearts and minds and getting people to think about plastics in a different way, right? And not in such a negative light, I think that it's important, to your point, to personalize it. And maybe
Yeah.
this is the right platform to do that, right? Because I think that probably that gets lost the most in all of this, right? Is like people have a lot of emotions and thoughts around sustainability and things like that, or the industry. And I feel like personalizing it back to, like, we're all people, we're all trying to, help make the world a better place, right? And help support, new developments in all these different markets, and, whatever that may look like. And I think that's important to, remind people of that. And maybe this is the right platform to do that,
Yeah.
for those that are not as familiar with it.
People give me a hard time because I've said publicly multiple times that I do what I do because I want to leave this world better than I inherited it as.
Mm-hmm.
And people will say, well, then you're doing the wrong thing in plastics. I'm like, no, I'm doing this because I do think this makes the world a better place.
Mm-hmm.
It's not because I get paid, like some people will say, well, you're a paid plastics guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, but I'm not getting paid to do this. This is just me doing this because I think it's important.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I'm all about that. But Danielle, anything else on your end?
To add to that point about, leaving the world better. There aren't many industries like plastic where you literally touch almost every industry in a day.
Right.
You can go from saving lives in the healthcare space to saving lives in the defense space in our jobs. And I think that's really unique.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's something that is not talked about enough. To promote the story, we could talk about that's a whole nother of discussion.
ACC for a while did an advertising campaign that showed like all the different things that plastics were in.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if they just didn't run it enough or whatever, but it didn't really make an impact. But shout out for April.
Mm-hmm.
She does that video of like what your life would look like without Styrenics, without the products that we make, is really good.
It's really,
And I'll post that on the YouTube for this too.
Part of it is educating people in our industry. We think teams who work in logistics, who work in customer service, who work in the plant, order fulfillment. Do they know the product they're moving, whether it be on paper or physically on a forklift, or do they know where the product's going?
right.
And I pretend they don't. I do situations with our customer service team to show them, hey, this is the part that you're working so hard on this order for, whatever. I know that order was a pain in the butt, but like, here's where it's going, and they involved, and then they go home and the impact they're having, it's meaningless. It's just another job. I think that, we're going to start somewhere.
So my last episode I did with John Scabardonis, who used to work for Covestro. And Covestro did a social media team that there was like 500 of them that would respond to things, something like that, like a plastics 101 for the industry, and say, hey, this is what we're doing. Here's the message. When you go talk to people, this is why we do what we do, which is why I've focused so much on the why of plastics. And I think the why of plastics helps us with drawing more women to the industry. I think this is all connected, which is why I want to have these conversations. I think they're that important.
I agree. That's the most interesting part of the job. Like I've said earlier, and like Danielle said too, is all the different things that we touch in this industry and all the different people we get to work with. And I think if you can, demonstrate that to people, that would go really far too.
So I think the last thing I will say is when I'm working for the two of you, please remember that I was nice to you. That's all I want. It's like when you guys are running the industry, I just want you to know I was a nice person. And please take care of me. In all seriousness, I do, and Alex, I give you a hard time about this, but we need women leaders, and we need women leaders with empathy that understand what women are going through. So I'm going to keep pushing you to be that leader that you already are. Just a matter of like taking on the role, you know, in the same way that Danielle's doing it. Danielle does it and she's great at it. And
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
you can be too if you want to do it. So I'm going to keep pushing you to do this. But with all of that said, I appreciate the heck out of both of you. I love working with the two of you, and I really appreciate you spending some time talking about some things that can be somewhat difficult and hard to manage, hard to talk about. And I feel like this should be beneficial for people that listen to it. At least I hope so. And so with all of that said, this has been the Redefining Plastics podcast. My name is Justin Riney for the guests. Have a great evening. If you want to learn more about the plastics industry, recycling, check out these other videos.
Please like and subscribe.